This is Mindrolling, and I'm Raghu Markus with another edition. This is a special edition in that it comes from our spring retreat in Maui, in which I managed to get together with Bob Thurman, who was one of the presenter teachers at the retreat, which was all around love and emptiness, and Duncan Trussell, my good buddy, my podcast guru. Now, the strange thing that happened here is that my son, Noah Markus, who works for the foundation, put together that wonderful, edited that wonderful book we just have out now, by the way, called Changing Lenses, which is Ram Dass's greatest hits and rarities of stories that he has told throughout the years in his talks. So there's some wonderful, wonderful stories in there. And so Noah said to me, I'd really like to talk to Bob because I have some questions around some of the articles that I'm writing. I said, okay, we'll get Bob and we'll do a little podcast, and then we'll throw Duncan in there in the mix to make it even more crazy and interesting. And then the podcast opened up, as you'll hear in a minute, and my son said, okay, I'm taking over now. I'm taking over from Raghu. I said, oh, really? Okay. This is like the changing of the guard, I guess. So all of a sudden he starts interviewing Bob and Duncan and so on. So this is, I kind of feel a lot of pride about it, actually. I never even knew he was interested, honestly. And he just thought it would be a fun thing, but this may be something that he'll continue, which would make me happy. So here is this lovely, lovely podcast. And of course, Bob, there's a talk about right livelihood, which is what Noah really wanted to get at him about. That is quite phenomenal. Of course, Bob has a lot of wisdom from his many, many years of closeness to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and his study of Buddhist texts and so on. I mean, I think I've mentioned before, because I've had Bob on Mindrolling, that I said he learned to speak Tibetan within 2 months. Actually, he learned it within 7 weeks. So, here we go. I can't think of anything else. Is there anything else I should be saying about Be Here Now Network? Just go to BeHereNowNetwork.com/mindrolling, and you will find all of the show notes and everything else, and we'll give you some real cool links to further elucidate whatever's coming through in this particular episode. And I will see you next week on Mindrolling. This is a passing of the mantle to my son.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I am hijacking
that's
Mindrolling. All right.
Yes.
Good.
And your name is Neil, right?
And I'm Noah.
Oh, Noah.
Noah Markus. For those of you who don't know me. Yeah.
One consonant. Okay, Noah.
So yeah, I'll introduce myself.
Ready for the arc.
Yeah.
I am Raghu's son, and I do some work for the foundation.
Okay.
I do some writing for the Awakened Heart blog, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, I am hijacking the show today.
That's really great.
Cool.
Your mom is Parvati?
My mom is Parvati.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, let's see.
No, I didn't know it was your Okay. Mom is Parvati.
Yeah.
That's an honor.
Dad is Raghu.
And Dad is Raghu.
Yes. So I'm here with Raghu, with the venerable Robert Thurman, and with Duncan. My identity is psychedelics Trussell.
Oh, God, it's so embarrassing.
Let's start there. Let's just start there.
Psychedelic struggle? That's your moniker?
You want to start at that?
Yeah, because Bob didn't get to hear that this morning,
God,
I didn't
that
think.
Was a bomb. Well, I was just... we were talking about, you know that bit of spaciousness you get when you start seeing your personality and,
Yeah, sure.
and stopping the habituation.
Yeah.
So I was telling this story that happened recently with my wife because she was going to a retreat and I wanted to do ketamine, psychedelic, you know, to go into
yes,
the
yes,
KO.
ketamine, yes.
And she's like, maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't do it. And I got mad. And this,
Oh,
you know,
no.
that thing that pops out of your mouth, you know, the embarrassing thing, you can't stop it though, that shows the truth. So I like squeaked out, psychedelics are my identity. And, oh God, so embarrassing. And then there was just a silence following that as we both looked at each other and I realized like, oh, wow. How ridiculous. What a ridiculous thing to get attached to, you know?
It's all right.
So it was embarrassing. And I said that today in front of all those people.
I
In
thought
that case,
that was great.
it's the identity of identitylessness. Like Nairatmya Paramatma, supreme self of selflessness, you know.
yeah.
Psychedelics shatters your identity, of course. That's the value of it.
Well, that's right. That is the value of it. But you can also stop shattering your identity and just start using psychedelics as a kind of tail feather that you waggle around.
Well,
you know?
you have to do low doses.
That's it. And that's, you know, but that's right. But this is the whole microdosing, you know, there's a huge microdosing movement.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful and good. But I was like, I think one of the problems is you don't get the anvil of
Yeah.
the anvil of the gods crushing your identity. You get these little euphoric bursts. And so you might be able to build an identity around psychedelics, float tanks, ayahuasca. The next
Okay,
thing you know,
sure.
that's who you
I
say
know.
you are.
That's right.
And there is a lot of this that's going on in our culture now in terms of identifying with I am a ayahuasca taker.
Or I'm a Buddhist.
Or I'm a Buddhist.
Or
too.
I'm a spiritual person.
I'm an ayahuasca. Yeah, everybody has some kind of identity hang-ups.
Yes, and that's this whole this film. We have a film, Bob. I didn't tell you about it. Ram
Yeah.
Dass called "Becoming Nobody."
Becoming nobody.
Yeah. And in it, Ram Dass, goes through the thing he's done.
Yes,
of
yes,
these
he's always
decades
been good
about-
at that.
Yeah, you're just stuck on your role and your identity, and you're somebody now.
Right, right.
And I was at Harvard, but I went to India, and I found a nobody, basically.
I see.
And
He
that's
didn't
it.
find it in the Millbrook bowling alley?
No, he did not. He
He
didn't.
He
claims he
found
didn't.
something in there.
I don't know about that.
Wow, what a
What?
the
Okay,
Millbrook Bowling Alley. We should talk about that.
Well, I wasn't there, so I just heard about it.
All right, what's the...
All right. Well, yeah, we're talking about identity already, and can we talk a little bit about movie of me stuff that I just have a couple questions about?
Yeah.
So we've been talking,
Yes.
three of us, a lot
Yes,
about
go on.
the concept of the movie of me, the Katie's
Yes, right.
concept of, I don't know, one of you
Right.
could probably
Bob
do
knows
the,
it well.
Yeah.
Right.
So here we have a good idea of what the movie of me is. We all have that
Yeah.
picture. Now, what I'm trying to get at these days is what does the movie of us or the movie of we look like? And
Right.
do you have any insight there? Something that you said struck me the other day. Emptiness is selflessness.
Right. That's
And I felt like
it's equated with that.
That's a good place to start for the
Right.
movie of us.
Well, selflessness just means resilience of identity. And the way that you achieve that is actually the specialty of the Buddha and of Nagarjuna and all of the great Buddhist inner scientists, is the formation of identity, the deconstruction of identity, and actually the reconstruction of identity once you have the true resilience of identity. Because there's no staying in a state of identitylessness. That's itself a state, kind of, So
What's the resilience? That's
What?
such a resilience, great word.
Yeah, resilience is the real thing, meaning you realize, because the key thing about emptiness, people wrongly think that when you realize emptiness, you have an experience of nothingness, and that makes you kind of devil may care about everything, and you just don't give G, A, F, you just don't do it, and then you just can do whatever you like, and then we have a lot of bad gurus who behave badly, and they claim, yeah, because I realized emptiness, which is ridiculous. Actually, nobody realizes emptiness. Emptiness is because you already are emptiness if you're a relative being, and therefore you simply surrender to your relativity is what realizing emptiness means. And so realizing emptiness means that and the last bastion actually of the identity habit is to have an experience that you think fits with your preconceived idea of nothing, which is like an obliteration experience. And then you think, oh, that was emptiness, so now I'm enlightened. But that's a BS, you know. And of course, then you feel good about that experience. It's an important experience to experience nothing, to let yourself go kind of down the drain, surrender to it. But actually, obviously, nothing is not a place you can stay because it's nothing. So, and that actually knowing that helps you to overcome the fear of it. But to let yourself go into nothing requires overcoming a certain fear. But the best way of going through that fear is realizing that, well, nothing can't keep me because it doesn't exist. And then you go into what's called emptiness, but in a way you don't have an experience of it directly. What you do is you have the experience of relative things, but they don't see you. You experience them in a lighter way where they don't seem to be really what they seem to be anymore. They used to seem to be, not, as my old Lama used to say, the Mongolian guy, you see them still as real, but you don't see them any longer as really real. You realize they're kind of magically real. Right. And so what that means is the realization of emptiness makes you finally realize that any sense of identity that you have is a work in progress, is a relational activity. And you are a work in progress, and therefore it makes you responsible for how you create yourself and how you shape yourself. And obviously, because there's a release involved in letting go of all the preconditioned identities, there's a feeling of freedom and relief and release, and therefore you feel better than anything else, really, than you ever did. And so that better feeling radiates outward as love. Because you also begin to see others as feeling better than even they think they feel. And so you become an entertainer.
That's cool.
You become like how to get them to chuckle out of there, like laughing or whatever, you know, freak out, to chuckle out of their rigid sense of, I don't feel that good enough, you know.
Yeah.
And because you see that actually they feel better, but their brow is all knitted, and you immediately feel that when you have that experience like that. But it's not an experience of a big space. That's BS. That's actually a trap. The big space one is a valuable one, but you have to know ahead of time that, even the space one is my idea of what a free space is. Because the mind is so powerful. Mind creates everything. So it can create you feeling, I'm God, or I'm this, or I'm that. And you shouldn't be stuck even on that, you know, actually.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then when you're not, you become a participant in relativity. And then there's nothing to do but, in the words of the famous Hindu Buddhist, love, serve, and remember.
Right. Yeah.
You don't become a big boss, which is what the guru people want to be. And they think they want to be worshipped and they want to be a boss. And that means they haven't really gotten there. They didn't really give it up. You know, and remember gate, paragate? If the blacks with the jazz, that's real gone, man. I mean, it's amazing how the sort of hipster language has somehow subliminally come up from the underground, the unconscious, and it fits with the highest, like, enlightened mantras. It's really amazing. Yeah. Because gate means gone. Super gone, man.
Super gone.
Super totally gone, man. All hail Bodhi,
Yeah.
That's what it is.
What's the
So the resilience, so therefore the resilience, and then that's where then India is so great because Tantra comes in, whether Shaivite, Hindu, Vaishnavite, Buddhist, whatever it is. And then that's the art of constructing divine identities within a context. And the reason it was esoteric is if someone hasn't completely surrendered all grasping of identities, if they get the tools of constructing identity, they'll become megalomaniacs. Because they'll shift the rigidity and non-resilience of identity from being a human to being like big, Shiva or something. Do you know what I mean? Or Mrs. Shiva or whatever, And
What
then
a
then they
mess.
become insufferable,
Yeah. This reminds me of
Yes, the venerable Duncan.
Not yet.
Yes.
No. I don't want to be venerable. The
That's the best kind. That's how Aquaman got the trident.
I gotta finish it. We watched.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, did I spoil it?
I knew Aquaman had a trident, so you didn't spoil it. I just don't.
Okay. I will not say anymore. I won't say anymore.
The Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche.
Yeah.
There's a great documentary on him, and I don't understand it completely.
You don't understand what?
Well, they said people would come and bring him their lineages or something. Like
Who?
Dilgo
Khyentse.
Khyentse.
Oh, Dilgo Khyentse, yeah.
It was some kind of lineage, like they would come and give.
Oh, they all hung up about that.
Okay. So I don't know what it meant. But the story is he was sitting, there were all these monks coming to like talk with him, and he was having little darshan.
Yes.
And most of the monks, I don't know, I guess they were illustrious or something. But in the
Yeah,
back
they
of the
tend to get to be illustrious, yeah.
but there was in the back of the room this old man in like tattered robes.
Yeah, okay.
And Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche notices him and says, come here. And they go into another room. In the movie, in the documentary.
Wow.
And they go and talk for, 2 hours.
Yes.
Because whoever that guy was, this
Yes.
unremarkable guy,
Right.
that guy was a somebody.
Right.
Who had just sort of come down.
Well, he was a nobody somebody, right.
Yeah.
Nobody, somebody.
Nobody.
Right.
Yeah, that.
Nobody, somebody. That's great.
But this is this thing we're all talking about. It runs counter to all of the conditioning, and it's revolutionary. It's communist because for capitalism to work, you need this identity that gets defined by stuff you buy.
Yeah, so it is revolutionary. Listen,
Yeah.
Bob,
Yeah.
how about this?
What?
I have often I've thought about it, and, it's been a question. All of us that went to India, Ramdas,
Yes.
Richard to Ramdas,
Yes.
Jeffrey to Krishnadas, Mitchell to Vidyadas, which is my full name. He gave us all names, this being.
Yes.
And we're talking about re-identifying oneself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a reconstruction of he's giving you spiritual names in helping you align yourself with it. And actually, most of us have a real gratitude to express to in theogenics or psychedelics, because those great gurus like him and Dalai Lama, Dilgo Khyentse, Maiki Shivangel, they recognize that we all have these kind of shattered identities by having had that vision quest experience. In an industrial culture, we don't have plants, so Mr. Hoffman, found some ergotamine, some mold he gave to us. And that was really valuable because otherwise we were Americans, like ridiculous identities and very destructive actually on the planet. So then we just wandered out, and these blessed people, they gave us tools to begin to reconstruct in some way some kind of viable, helpful, loving identity,
Wow.
And but we gravitated toward it. It isn't just that. It wasn't just the psychedelics, and it wasn't just the historical moment, but it was also for our previous lives. We came here. America is actually there's an idea that is America that is still good. I really I get upset with people who completely blast it. And they have every right. Genocide of the native people, enslavement of the black people, etc. A bunch of nonsense, but really bad, violent stuff. And but Jefferson and those guys, they learned from the Iroquois Confederacy. The white roots of peace. Deganawida. The Onondaga and the Mohawk and the Algonquin, and they tried to, and they felt the energy of America, which is kind of a magical continent, all the Americas. And they tried to have an ideal of equality, and all this kind of thing that they couldn't do in the old world because of those rigid identities and all the caste system. And that includes Asia. Asia had its caste system, Chinese hierarchies, they had. And so we somehow took rebirth in America, and then we kind of helped deconstruct too violent an idea of America to some extent. And then we were lost, so we then were found kind of by by these beautiful people, but they probably knew of our past lives too. And some of us, they kind of made a thing, but if they gave us recognition, that would be bad. Then we'd become all gurufied, and we'd exploit that and use it in a stupid way.
Which is why Ramdas, and I look at it now and I see the level of honesty, humility, etc. He could not do anything but act in a compassionate, kind, peaceful manner.
I know, that is wonderful. I mean, Ramdas, I knew him before that.
I know.
And he was a professor, and he was whatever, from wealthy family and professor, and
with a real identity.
And there's a weird thing, I taught at Harvard a few years, visiting professor from when I used to be in Amherst. They tried to lure me there when I wanted to graduate school. And I had a funny experience going to the faculty club one day, and I was walking along the sidewalk, and I suddenly thought, wow, I must be a genius. I'm teaching at Harvard. I had already been an undergraduate and graduate, but there's a kind of arrogance. It's kind of ruined the place a little bit lately. But it has a magic. Do you know in Chinese, what it's called? Hafo Daxue. And Hafo is phonetic for Harvard, 2 syllables. But the guy who picked it in the 19th century, nobody knows who it was, but because it's carved on some Chinese stones in characters right in front of Widener Library. But the guy who picked the character Ha, which means to laugh, and Fo means the Buddha. Wow. So it's the University of the Laughing Buddha.
Oh, that's cool.
But they don't know that. They're the laughing capitalists,
Well, they made the Unabomber.
Yeah, he was a classmate of mine, but I didn't know him. But I was also the same class of 62.
Wow.
Oh, for God's sake.
And he's a Theodore, whatever he is.
Theodore Kaczynski.
Yeah. But that's terrible. You can't kill innocent people. You can't do that. That's terrorism.
Well, it's terrible.
But the guy's completely crazy.
What?
So he's nuts.
But
he got very smart nut. Apparently,
Yes.
there are people who really like him.
Right?
It was the CIA. It was the whatever the precursor of the CIA was, which I can't remember the name. And before the CIA? What was it called?
OSS.
The OSS was working with the guy running the psychology department at Harvard.
Yeah.
Who was doing these crazy experiments on Kaczynski, who got a scholarship when he was 16. So he
really?
Oh yeah, look into it. It's so weird.
Is that in the Pollan book, Michael Pollan book? I didn't see that piece of information.
No, the Pollan book is that's the one.
The Pollan book is beautifully researched about the psychedelic movement.
No, they skip Kaczynski. He doesn't. I don't think Kaczynski fits
really?
into this.
I didn't see that particular piece. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, that's
before McClellan, you mean, and before Tim and Richard and Metzner.
Yeah, I can't remember the professor's name now.
I thought that happened in Toronto, in Canada. They didn't do it in the States.
No, it was Harvard, and they broke that man, and they were keeping him in the dark. They think they might have been giving him acid, and then they were humiliating him because they wanted to see if you could destroy someone's identity and replace it with something else.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh Jesus.
Well, that's all terrible stuff.
Yeah.
Terrible,
All
right. Sorry.
Move along.
Good time to
Sorry,
switch
yes,
gears.
that's okay. No, what? Now, what's next? No.
So here's what's next.
Okay.
I've been working on this article for too long now on right livelihood. I'm stuck on it.
Oh yes.
I know it's a fairly simple thing, right?
It's a good thing.
I'm stuck. Can you just give me right livelihood 101?
Sure.
Real quick.
Right, actually, I don't like right and wrong. I like realistic and unrealistic for the Eightfold Path, because the point is it's whatever connects to reality. Right and wrong are sort of like following a rule, and the Western ethics coming from Christianity on the one side, and then the other side sort of whatever. It's like you're following rules, laws, But realistic means you have a livelihood that is the best way of fitting in with reality and living relativity, And the best thing for human life is not to be harmful. So that's basically all it is. You don't be a butcher, if possible. You definitely don't own chicken farms and slaughterhouses. You don't trade in weapons, poisons, drugs, human trafficking, anything that's harmful to beings, animals or people, is basically realistic livelihood. But the Buddha was more practical than the Mahavira, who he was a colleague with in a way, who was so freaked out about it that you couldn't breathe in the air because there might be a bug in it, and and then you couldn't. And the Buddha allowed his monks, for example, if they went to a household that ate meat, and they gave them some chicken soup, they could have it. But if they said, oh, well, we're going to make some chicken soup, we have to go kill a couple of chickens, then we'll make some chicken soup. Then they said, no, thanks, and leave.
Right.
But if they're already eating that, and that's what they eat, you can't refuse, actually, unless you're allergic to it or something. And so then the Jains were all up, wound up about that, about the Buddhists. But the point is, in those days, that was realistic. And you didn't blame those people. And, they had an argument against a certain guy who was not a Jain and not a Buddhist, but another one of those early teachers who had a thing where you just starve yourself to death. And when your body dies, then you attain moksha, they thought. But then Buddhists were against that, because if you starve yourself to death, you kill your microbiome. And the Buddhists knew about the microbiome, ancient medicine.
Really?
And, yeah, sure. They knew you were made up of a community of beings. Your own body was.
Yeah.
And so if you kill yourself, you're killing a lot of other beings who are a colony inside yourself. So he was there is a certain amount of harmfulness you can't avoid as a human being. But the idea is you use this platform of the human life with its intelligence and its vulnerability and sensitivity, and therefore kind of urgency about becoming something higher. And then you try to become a being of light. You try to become like Obi-Wan, Jedi, and a Buddha. And then you can really be helpful to others. And then you really are not harmful, because you don't need ordinary food, and you don't need, you just live, you're just being of energy. That's a Buddhahood. It's like that.
Okay. So
And you could manifest this coarse body where you'd go and have to hang out with people and be like them a little bit to get close to them. But you actually don't need a thing, But technically, it's such a preposterous definition for materialists. We don't agree with it. We can't really believe in it if we're brought up materialists. But a Buddha is a being who is consciously aware of themselves, their body and mind, from the micro energy, pure energy level. If you think of your hand as made of quantum energy, right? There's atoms in there, but that's just a level of magnification. And inside of that, there's quantum energy. And then there's light inside of that. And of course, light is everywhere simultaneously. That's why light can't go faster. And so if you're conscious of your hand from the light, that's the most deepest level of the presence of the relative level of the presence of the hand, then you could add 50 fingers if you needed them. Do you know what I mean? You can just make anything out of anything, supposedly. And I grant you, and I realize that is very unrealistic sounding to materialists, but that's how Buddhism is, Buddhahood is defined. And in other words, that's the human opportunity of evolving into all these things that I think are coming into the American unconscious by means of the Matrix, the Jedi, sci-fi. Sci-fi really is beginning to make sort of subconsciously seem possible, even, that you could be a being like the one who is the one,
that we can bend the spoon.
Yeah, that's what I want to make, a fourth Matrix. I'm desperate to make a fourth Matrix. I talked to Joel Silver, and he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to have to work with those actors, the same actors, But I the only one I still like is Keanu, especially. And I want to resurrect Trinity.
Yeah.
I don't know how we'll do it, but somehow. And because you realize that in the Matrix, toward the end, and even already in the second one, he started operating with his mind on material objects outside of the Matrix.
Yes.
Remember, he knocked out all those octopuses when he was flying?
Yes.
And one time, when he first did it, was in the tunnel. He was walking around and some octopuses came after him, and he went like, and then knocked it down and then passed out.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes.
So that's beginning to hint that this is a matrix. And there is a being who can be the one in this, that is, know the structure of it, the inner design of it, as well as participate in it as an individual.
Yes.
That's kind of cool. But they never unpacked that.
No.
Yeah, the third movie was just not that great. I don't know.
Well, I love
there.
all of it, except I'm pissed off they killed off Trinity. That pissed me off. Some octopus put a spike in her heart.
Honestly, I don't even remember the third movie. Is that
what?
I don't even remember the third movie. Is that
really?
bad? Yeah.
But it was so cool. The battle.
Disappointing.
The bad guy even got the ability to multiply his body. And how did Neo defeat him? It's totally Buddhist. They don't even know it themselves. The Wachowski sisters are my heroines. The way that he was defeated, the bad guy he just became just as powerful in the Matrix as Neo, and he defeated him, right? And then he was going to turn Neo into himself, right? So he plunged his fist into the Matrix Neo. Remember that? And then Neo came and he went home, started going, oh no, oh no. And actually he became a good guy like Neo.
Oh yeah.
That's how. So Neo defeated him by becoming him.
Yeah.
And he was going to make Neo himself. But once Neo was totally open and willing to embrace even the evil guy, then the evil guy turned good.
Yeah.
So he couldn't be the evil guy.
That's cool.
Wasn't that cool?
Yeah.
I forgot
Then, of
about
course,
that.
they dragged the body over back to the computer, and it was all completely confused after that. You know.
Have you seen any?
What?
Have you ever seen a monk do any of these things? I hear these stories.
What thing?
Well, I mean, the stories I've heard is they can walk through walls, they can walk on water, they can fly, they can transform
They can.
into rainbow
By
body.
definition, they're not just Tibetans, but Theravada. This is all common Indian knowledge. This kind of thing, by definition.
Have you
Have I
observed
ever
it?
seen them? No, I've heard of it. Yes, but I have not seen it.
All right, let me interject.
Yes.
Today, at breakfast, a friend of mine who was with Maharaji,
Aha.
with us back in the day,
Yes.
he has had one experience where he saw Maharaji in a taxi in Chicago, where he lives. He said, something else happened to me. I said, what? He said, I went to the Schwitz.
You speak louder.
I went to the Schwitz,
Oh,
to the steam bath.
with
And
Maharaji?
No, he went alone. No, Maharaji wasn't there. And then he was there. He said there was another man there
Yeah.
and steam coming. And then there was one other man came in the room and this other large gentleman left, he said. The one who came in the room looked like, one of these really tall, cut cheek, handsome dames, right? Or
Yes.
something. He said, I swear to God,
What?
he walked over to the wall, all right, opposite the door, and went into the wall and disappeared.
I believe it, because by definition I have to. But if I saw it, I'd flip. But I have seen some extraordinary things, but you're not supposed to talk about.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but a little bit. But I didn't see that going through walls, things like that, in a way, except at certain moments. Actually, I did a little bit. Like my Mongolian guru arrived when like from New Jersey to New York in a moment, etc. So I have a little bit seen that.
Yeah.
But you're not supposed to. But I was in altered state also. So then people could say it was just a hallucination. So, and then I have seen some other thing. But then my wife had a killer on this one. My wife once, there was an Indian guy who was asking me at a lunch, a wealthy Indian guy in the Trump Tower actually. They had an apartment there, and I was about to lunch, and he said, "Well, you know the Dalai Lama. Have you seen him do any miracles?" He's going like that. So I have seen a few things, but I didn't. So I was sort of thinking in my mind, what did I say, And I didn't want to completely disappoint him, but you're not supposed to talk about it. So my wife, Nina, immediately says, "Oh yes, many times." What did you say? And then the guy's leaning on the edge of his chair, and I'm going, "Oh, what did she say?" So then she says, "Well, we've hosted him a lot of times in different events, and we've sort of monitored him like Raghu does, with other people coming and going and all that sort of thing." And she said, in all of those events, with everybody wants a piece of the Dalai Lama, she said, in all of those events, I have never seen him not give his 100% attention to whoever was in front of him seeking his companionship. And the guy goes, "Oh," and then she says, "That's a miracle." She says, and he goes,
Nobody wants that.
Yeah, I mean, let's not leave that point. That is the biggest miracle, as far as I'm
Exactly.
concerned.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Actually, in the Buddhist literature, they say the biggest miracle about a Buddha is his speech. Because it's through a Buddha's speech of teaching Dharma that other beings can open to their own potential, rather than showing a miracle. Although Buddha,
Wow.
in many of the sutras, Buddha definitely performs miracles. In the Vimalakirti Sutra, he performs awesome miracles that are really cool. But then, when I translate it, I write an introduction. You guys can see this as an allegory, or you can think maybe these kind of extraordinary things are possible if you are open, if you can open your mind like that. But you can do it whatever way you want. It doesn't matter.
Well, can you talk about the stricture on discussing this stuff?
Which one?
Well, to me, the fascinating thing I've discovered in Buddhism is the realization that there are levels that are concealed. And
Oh, yeah.
within those levels are these miracles, but they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to put it out there. And
Buddha forbid them to put it out there. Actually, it's a breaking of the monastic vow to proclaim your clairvoyances and demonstrate them. Although occasionally they did for some particular reason.
Wow.
But basically, he didn't want them becoming, like circus performers and freaks and gaining popularity that way. And then people coming to him and like wanting them to perform miracles.
Right.
He wanted them, in fact, to educate people and educate themselves. And then occasionally maybe use something in some case where it was saving a life or doing something. Yes, like he himself did. Like that guy, the serial killer that he tamed and who became an arhat, a saint, who had killed 999 people. He manifested himself as looking like his mother, and he did martial arts, and he wore the guy out, and then so he occasionally did it himself. And they say it's possible. And from the point of view, quantum physics since 1926 Copenhagen Declaration has proven to us that that materialism does not have a solid grasp on the nature of reality, and therefore anything is possible.
Sure.
But to open your mind to that when you grow up with materialism is another matter.
Yeah, right. Do you know what Maharaji called miracles?
What?
Pig shit.
Big shit. That's right. That's good.
He said, they used to have contests in the old days,
But occasionally, listen, I saw a miracle once when I wasn't stoned. I was totally ordinary. It was like a semi-dream, sort of dream, reverie, whatever you want to call it. And it was very visceral. And it was in 1971. You will really like this one. And it was when Russians and Chinese were fighting on the thing. Bangladesh, horrible business was going on. Nixon and Kissinger were against Mrs. Gandhi, and they were like, wanted the Chinese to invade to save Bangladesh for the West Pakistanis who were committing genocide there. It was a horrible time, It's the time that Ram Dass talks about where he said it's perfect, but it stinks.
Yeah, wait,
so
he wanted to take his Volkswagen.
So I had just had some thing in Hayagriva, but the fierce form of Avalokiteshvara. I had some teaching about that. I was trying in my pathetic way to deal with it, and not mastering it all, even still. But then I had this weird dream, and in the dream was really, really visceral. And in that dream, Nixon had given Brezhnev, he had shut down Kissinger, who wanted him to open negotiation with China. And although Kissinger was still preparing it. But anyway, he had authorized Brezhnev to nuke China, nuke Mao, because the Russians hate them, and they hated Mao. They really did. And the Chinese were just beginning to get a little mini nuclear stuff, but nothing much. And so it was time to obliterate them before they do. And Nixon had authorized Brezhnev to do that because in the dream. And then they were calling back and forth, and their red phones, and far from preventing a crisis, they were about to create a crisis. And suddenly I was riding on the back, or sort of in the hairdo of Hayagriva. And he had this flaming hair. It's like one of those kind of fierce Buddhas in this case, not really a protector Buddha. And Hayagriva is related to Shiva. Hayagriva means the horse neck. And it's I remember Shiva swallowed the poison and he got the blue neck. And so it's a little bit related to that. And so I was riding on the back. I was not with the Dalai Lama. He was in a different village in the Himalayas, but I was in the Himalayas. And so I kind of was associated with him, but in a Hayagriva form, but never mind. That was just my fantasy in the dream. And I was looking down and I could see the White House and I could see the Kremlin. And they were pressing buttons. And strangely, Tim Leary was in Switzerland at the time. And somehow his presence in Switzerland was critical to somehow the link. I don't know why. I just throw it out there because I think it intrigued you. It intrigued me. And I was aware of him there in his Mahakala form, actually. And who was another kind of Mahakala. But never mind.
Tim Leary had a Mahakala form?
He had a tanka. It was given to him by my teacher, that of amazing Tanka Mahakala. So in my dream, he was connecting to Mahakala, and somehow he was making a link between Washington and Moscow. So then Brezhnev pressed all the buttons, totally, and they were going to fly. And I could feel this Hayagriva thing under me, and he just put his head went whap like that. And his hair, his flaming hair, sort of went into all the electronics, the air.
Yeah.
And I could feel it, but I mean, wasn't doing it. I was like hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
And then there was phone calls, and I was able to hear all the phone calls, like an NSA spying organization or something, in the dream. And there were phone calls going back in Russian, but I somehow was understanding Russian, which I don't. And they were saying, "But Mr. Secretary, we get no impulse. But there's nothing wrong with any circuit, but no impulse is coming." And then Nixon was saying, "Well, get on with it. What's the matter?" "Well, it's not working." They were freaking out. And then I had this funny thing where Brezhnev, I don't know what the kind of button the Russians had, but it looked like he was masturbating because he was like pressing a button, He was like one of those things that controls a slide projector, He was like, and his hand was going up and down, and nothing was happening. And then suddenly the roof of the Kremlin and the roof of the White House became transparent, and they looked up. And they saw Hayagriva in the sky, somehow over both places, like a really fearsome sight, like really looking at a wrathful deity, And they both looked like naughty boys. And then the dream was over. And I was like shaken. It was like really vivid, total vivid. And then the next morning, I go down to our Volkswagen bus that we had at that time, 1971, in India. And because I want to drive down and get some groceries or something, and then somebody had smashed the window with a brick wrapped in a newspaper, and Hindi newspaper, and the newspaper had the flash thing: "Nixon goes from Rawalpindi to Beijing," and some Tibetan, somehow associating me with the Americans, I think, considering it a betrayal, smashed my window, and he wrapped it in the newspaper of a thing, and I had, it took me months to find another Volkswagen front windshield. And I swear, His Holiness, and the last thing of the dream was a little side transmission from Zhou Enlai, to the Hayagriva. I was just eavesdropping on it all, and he was laughing at the Dalai Lama. And he was saying, "Ha, ha, ha. You can't even bear to see the destruction of your enemies. Ha, ha, ha."
Wow.
He was saying.
Wow.
Really, I swear. So I consider that some miraculous thing that Dalai Lama did to prevent some mass horrible Chinese genocide, even though they were torturing the Tibetans at that time in the worst way. Zhou Enlai was laughing in his face. I actually put it in my graphic novel biography.
Oh, yeah.
If you remember that, it's toward the end, very daringly, and I'm terrified of the day when His Holiness actually bothers to read it. He looks at that and he says, "What is this?" Because I have him sort of sitting over. I have Hayagriva. It wasn't the right representation of Hayagriva, but it's the best the artist could do. And I have him sitting meditating with the light coming out, but sort of associating him with the Hayagriva. And he will know, I think, what I'm talking about, and he'll be pissed off. But then the later thing about it, and I'm totally skeptical too, and etc. But the later thing about it was, the next year I was finishing my PhD, and I visited the campus at Harvard, and I talked to a guy named Holmes Welch, who was a Harvard China scholar, wrote about Chinese Buddhism, was a friend of mine, very delicate kind of guy. And I said to him, "Did he ever hear anything?" Because some of those Harvard professors have connections in Washington. I said, "Did he ever hear anything about an aborted alliance between Nixon and the Russians to do something to the Chinese?" And he said, "How did you know about it?" He initially said, "How did you hear about that?" Wow. He's all like wound up. And then, of course, no, I never heard anything. And then he got his personality back on. So I think there was something like that.
Sure.
And I think it was stopped like that.
Wow.
So that gives me the weird faith. It has always given me, and my old Geshe-Wanga once, before then, I think earlier than that, once drew himself up when people were freaking out about a possible nuclear holocaust. And he said, "There will never be a nuclear holocaust." He said, "I guarantee it," he said. And then one of those kind of things, that Mongolian thing, like,
Wow.
Okay, great, you guarantee. But he was connected with that kind of
Wow.
thing. He knew about that.
That's cool.
He is
That's
really,
quite
I thought you'd
a
like.
dream there.
I like it. I don't mind sharing it because it's just my own
Right.
dream fantasy A and B. Maybe some people will get my own dumb confidence, and at least we don't have to worry about nuclear holocaust.
Dumb
The angels
confidence.
will intervene. The deities, the
UFOs.
the magical people. So yeah, whatever. Yeah, right.
Where are you going?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we got time for one last.
Yeah, we got
Okay.
time for one.
What's the
last
matter,
thing.
Nora?
All right,
Yeah.
Okay.
my one last thing here. All right, back to materialism, which
Yes.
we touched on a little
Yes.
bit. And the other day, you call the culture we live in lives by the philosophy of materialism.
Yes.
How the fuck do we live in a world where the philosophy is materialism?
Well, they're wrecking it. They're not going to live there longer.
Right.
That is one of the reasons I feel, for example, that there's a book that was published by a sociologist lady at Harvard and a technology guy at Caltech, little tiny pamphlet. It's like a sci-fi book, but it's a book written from the late 21st century, I think. And about after the planet has nearly been destroyed, but somehow there's a few people still exist. And they're talking about this period as the liminal period when something could have been done, but it wasn't done. It's a book like that to give you kind of a visceral feeling of if they don't do it. And they were saying one of the causes they say is that the scientists, they do say, all of them, 14,000 of them versus 3 people who work for Exxon, they say it's happening and it's hopeless, if you don't do something. They've been saying that for 15, 20 years. And they say that the scientists knew it, but somehow they didn't go out on the limb. They didn't all go out and march and Times Square or the White House or whatever. They kind of just, they're not listening to us. They were too passive. And they pretended that they were doing their science thing of, it's a hypothesis. You can predict the future. We're scientists. So, do you know what I mean? And then remember there were some emails that were leaked that the bad guys used and pretend that it was a hoax. That's the base on which they make it the hoax. So, but in that future thing, looking back, they were saying that the scientists just weren't strong enough in persuading the people. They didn't freak out, in other words. And why? Because if you believe in materialism, then, okay, it's nice living on Earth, but they're grown up. They're in their 50s and 60s. They have had knee replacements. They're fucked up. They have divorces, whatever. Their kids did. They're alcoholics, and at least if everybody gets killed, the Death Star destroys us all, then nobody will regret that they aren't living anymore because they all won't exist. And nobody will be in hell, and nobody will be in a worse planet because nobody will exist. So it makes people reckless and passive about measures you can take in this life to assure at least not a horrible future life for others who you love and yourself. And they say, we're still humanists and we care about our grandchildren, but they don't fucking care enough is the thing to switch off a few switches. Even, I was shocked yesterday, Jay Inslee, in the Daily Cost, which is a big liberal thing, they're mentioning, Inslee came out with his plan and Beto came out with his plan for climate change, but it's just Pollyanna, who's going to spend $1.5 trillion to fix it all in the next 8 years?
Yeah.
Even liberal one is saying that. Who asked them to say that? That's what the right-wingers say.
Yeah.
Because they want to keep the $1.5 trillion for their next tax cut.
That's right.
They'll spend $1.5 trillion in a minute. And deficit spending, they don't care. That's pocket change. 1.5 trillion to save the planet and to make the America green, which there's some people at Stanford who have a plan, state by state. Every state is 100% self-sufficient by 2025 with millions of jobs, good jobs that robots can't do.
Right.
And yet they dare say, that's Pollyanna. This whole thing that people say, it'll never happen. That'll never happen. About whatever they don't want to see happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And they get the reckless courage from that by the fact that they get scot-free just by dying. That's
right.
why my slogan is, nobody gets out of here a dead.
That's awesome. I know.
And you know that, did you see the lady, Michelle Alexander?
No.
She wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. I want to get my op-ed about the election, about the primaries. But she wrote an op-ed saying She wrote The New Jim Crow. She's a sociologist from U Chicago, I think, and great person. And she wrote, we have a million plus black guys incarcerated. And it's growing and numbers are still growing. And instead of being in school and doing rap music and making stock picks and whatever, if they were educated. And it's horrible, like slavery.
Legal slavery.
And so she wrote that book. And then she wrote this op-ed and she said, I don't believe in the future life, she said, but I wish I did, she said. And I wish everybody did.
Yeah.
Because maybe those people who won't change their behavior, as inhuman as it is, would then decide they better change it. And it's a long op-ed. It's really a cool one. And I really love that. I welcome that, because that's the key. It scares you. And even the materialists even convince themselves, Noah, they convince themselves that they're brave to accept nothingness. That's really brave. And I always tell them, you guys, when you're in the dentist chair and he's zeroing in on a root canal, you want nothing more than nothingness. You totally want it. And you're not scared of it. You're scared of pain. That's what you're scared of, but not of nothingness. It's just total BS. Whereas the future life person, they're scared of a bad future life where there would be more pain. And therefore, they'll behave better in this life in a natural thing, as a natural, enlightened self-interest thing. But I have the final word for them. I really finally got them. And they really get mad. After 40 years, I was reading another book. I didn't really nail it. They're supposed to believe only in evidence, only in proven, experienced stuff, something you measured. And yet they believe they're going to be in nothing and they die. And therefore, they believe nothing is waiting there for them. They think if they don't get tenure or something, they can shoot themselves and they hit nothing. That's got to be blind faith belief. No, but I always ask them, which guy got the Nobel Prize for the discovery of nothing? That you, Steven Pinker at Harvard, and you, so-and-so material, Daniel Dennett and Tufts, and you guys are assuring the whole population that nothing is reality and that's scientific reality and it's all known and proven and established. But who discovered it? And when did they announce it? And how did they discover it? And who's going to get the prize for nothing?
This reminds me.
And that shuts them immediately down. It's less blind faith to believe Jehovah is a burning bush telling you to go see Pharaoh.
I know. This is Richard Dawkins' quote. Death is the anesthesia that saves us from the pain of life.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
Yeah. That's a fucking escapist bullshit.
It's heaven. It's heaven for the materialist. It's nothingness.
I know. And it allows them to let this planet be destroyed. And it allows George W. Bush to say to Bob Woodward, when Woodward said, don't you mind that your great-grandchildren you'll have a bad reputation of polluting the earth as an oil man and taking off climate protections, blah, blah, blah. And he says, no, I don't care about that because I don't care what they think about me because I won't be there. Jesus. So that means they don't care enough about their grandchildren. You follow? You have to have a little enlightened self-interest in there to really, because of the ego, the ego people, to really start making some sacrifices.
This is why I think the whole Soul Land thing is like great, but that idea of the spa experience in between lives, that one, like people say,
oh yeah, I like that.
You die, you go to like a spa.
That's great.
No, I think that's...
No, it's great. We have to convince Trump and people like that, tyrants and dictators who cause death and destruction, Putin, that they can come here to love, serve, remember, if they would just leave there, They can go to the angels will come and and they would give them...
Rub their back.
Cure their orgasmic impotency.
Yeah.
And then therefore they don't have to have 7 trophy wives and shit bullshit. They can have they can feel like a little inner streaming and whatever. Right?
Yes. And I agree. I like what you said on my podcast that we got to get...
Did I mention that?
Well, you did in a different way, but you did mention that we've got to get some of these world leaders on an island where they can I
have a fantasy. That's one of my fantasies.
Which is true. But I'm talking about, I had this awful, when I was exploring this concept of nothingness and realizing oh shit, I don't think this exists. I don't think there is a nothingness. I think it just keeps going and going. I think I was on acid. And I had this horrible vision.
Good for you.
That you don't get a break at all. That there is no spa in between, but it's like you die And then maybe you have a little deja vu or something, and you're just driving a taxi in New York.
Well,
you're in the middle of your life. It's not, we think you reincarnate, you live the whole life.
It depends on how open you are by how openly you lived, But also remember that, the Love Serve Remembering Squad,
Yes.
which are numerous Jedi warriors, bodhisattvas,
Yes.
Buddhas, Babajis, Maharajis, whatever you want to say about them. There are numerous ones, and one of the places they do a lot of work when they're sitting there talking to you in your coarse body, and they have their blankie and they're doing their thing.
Yeah.
But at night when you're sleeping, they're aware of the different people who are dying and being reborn, and they can appear to them and they can try to coax them upward or into a better place or not to be so freaked out. They really do. When the near-death experiences. People really do meet an ally or a guide or something who's someone they recognize from within their thing, and then that's a real. I mean, imagine if you were, and if you recover your Love Serve Remember Jedi warrior supernormal abilities. I never say supernatural, supernormal. Then one of the places you'll like to help people is after they die, before they get reborn. Try because they're very open in that time. They're in a dream state. So if you can appear to them in a dream state and get them to really go positive, they can make major shifts,
Is that what this is? How do we know this isn't the in-between state?
Well, this is an in-between. It's a different one, though. It's a little more congealed, It's a little more, there's a little more brain plaque here.
Okay.
They say the minute you die, you're 9 times more intelligent. When your holographic brain, subtle body brain, is free of the wetware.
Whoa.
You're 9 times more intelligent. You're automatically clairvoyant. And the reason they tell you that in the Book of the Dead is when you go to your funeral, when Uncle Joe is giving a hypocritical speech about, oh, poor Duncan, I really missed the guy. Oh, gee whiz. And then you can read their subconscious lower mind saying, that fucker, good riddance. I don't have to be bugged by him anymore. And then don't be pissed off. Because you have to stay in a good mood, and everybody has ambivalence in their mind, and then a little bit Uncle Joe does like you too, They go through a whole thing like that.
That's cool.
Because you're smarter in that between.
My friend, I don't mean to. Well, this is a crazy thing that happened. Yeah. Kind of the opposite of a miracle.
Yes.
When I was in high school, a friend that I knew, I ran into him at the mall. This is when malls meant something. Yeah. And we would take acid and go to the mall. That's North Carolina, just because it was fun to watch people shop when you're on acid.
Where? Down in Chapel Hill.
Blue Ridge. No, this is the Blue Ridge Mall in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
Okay.
And we would go there and get blasted. This is during the acid boom of the 90s when the Grateful Dead was, so you could get great acid. And we would take acid and just watch people go up and down the escalator.
The worst setting for acid I could possibly imagine.
We thought it was hilarious because it's so weird. And you realize how weird it is. P.S. While you guys are you're hanging out with the Dalai Lama, you're hanging out with Neem Karoli Baba, I'm at the mall on acid. That's my karma.
You're bringing the vision to those people. That's cool.
But my friend is walking out and he stops and I see him. I'm like, hi. And he's like, look what I got. The Tibetan Book of the Dead. He got the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Oh, he did?
Walden books.
Oh.
It could have been your translation.
Could have been.
And he shows it to me and he's like, it's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I didn't know even what I thought it was the Necronomicon or something. I'm like, I don't know what that is, man. It sounds dangerous. He was dead 2 days later.
Oh,
no. He was murdered.
Oh, my.
You're kidding.
No, he was murdered. Someone picked him up and dropped him on his head, shattered his head.
Who did that?
He was buying drugs.
Oh.
But how weird. It's like he knew somehow.
Maybe somewhere.
Somehow he knew and he grabbed it.
Oh, that's
sad.
God.
Maybe he knew he was involved with really hairy people, who are difficult and dangerous.
No, this was just a random occurrence. But yeah, it's just odd how.
But only 2 days. He didn't have time to read the book.
Oh, shit.
Too bad.
Oh, well.
But that doesn't matter. Listen, Avalokiteshvara, they'll show up. They will. Tara, Sri Devi,
hey.
Kali, Durga, they'll show up. They will try their best.
Do you have anything else?
No, I'm good. You guys.
Okay, well, the Love Serve, the Love Serve Remember squad needs a little of the blankie now. So,
they do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you had a mantra that you were saying, geez, we should have done that mantra.
Oh, yeah. Well, you mean the Sanskrit mantra?
Yeah.
Oh, that one.
Can you do just
Yeah,
a
well,
couple
that,
of
you know,
minutes?
the
Just
mantra I was saying to the group was freedom, love, om, freedom, love, home. But I didn't know that there was this mantra of I am loving awareness, which is same and really great, you know.
Yeah.
And the I am part made me think of this mantra, because the I am is precisely that responsible self-creation, which is the province of the tantras, you know, of the esoteric. And the reason it's of the esoteric is that, you know, it could be used by egotists to create egomania, you know, say, I am so great, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but in the case of someone who's already realized resilience by having been able to surrender their identity grasping, it's creative, actually. So the Sanskrit one, which is foundation of Unexcel Yoga Tantra, is Om Shunyata Jnana Vajra Swabhavatma Koham. And the shunyata is this openness or emptiness, which is almost better to say openness, less scary for people and quite accurate. And Om, as we know, is Om, you know, invoking all the gods, all the Buddhas, body, speech, and mind, and so on. And then Jnana, Jnyana, is like gnosis, you know, kno in English. It's the same word, actually, as the Greek word gnosis and the English word kno, you know, the gnya, you know. So jnana, but it means, in this case, not subject-object knowing, but direct intuitive subject-object transcending knowing emptiness by being emptiness, by affirming you are emptiness, you know. So Shunyata Jnana, intuition of emptiness, it's Vajra, and Vajra means the most powerful energy in the universe, which is associated with diamond and lightning, and yet means, in this case, love, because it's not violent. In other words, although the lightning is violent, but this is the Vedic Vajra was Indra's weapon and was violent, but this is not violent. It's just infinite energy. It doesn't need to be violent because it's infinite. It overwhelms anything. Love does. So Om Shunyata Jnana Vajra, the diamond of love. Swabhava Atma Koham. Aham is I am. Aham, you know, I. And the ham, the gets dropped, you know. And Atma Ko is Atma. And the Ka part means the soulfulness. It sort of adds to soul. And Swabhava means reality. You know, like deep reality. So I am the soulful reality of the loving diamond of the intuitive oneness with emptiness.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, that's it. Can you just repeat the Sanskrit?
Om Shunyata Jnana Vajra Swabhavatma Koham. Om Shunyata Jnana Vajra Swabhavatma Koham. Om Shunyata Jnana Vajra Swabhavatma Koham. Krishna Das, I want you to sing those mantras.
We'll ask him.
I do.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you guys. That
Thank
you,
you.
Noah.
Great job.
Oh,
as
thank
always.
you. Thank you,
Venerable Duncan. I'm
Thank
sorry,
you,
as usual, I talk
Venerable.
too much.
No, we love it.
Nina is
You
not here
should
to tell
be
me to shut
talking.
up.
No, you're supposed to be talking.
It's your job.
Yeah.
See you all later.
Beautiful.